Big game, bigger venue on the biggest channel of them all. That's right, Peacock. But hey, get ready for it. It's a Locked On crossover episode. Let's go.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Today's crossover episode of Locked On Spartans and Locked On UCLA is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Spartan friends, Spartan family, also UCLA Nation. Again, guys, Locked On crossover. I'm Matt Sheehan over at Locked On Spartans over there on the sunny West Coast. What's up, Zach? How we doing? Zach Anderson, Yoxheimer. Life treating you well over there? You guys are riding a nice little win streak.
Yeah, they're doing well. It's supposed to rain this week, funny enough, so maybe not too sunny. Yeah, it's supposed to be a little
It does
cool.
That over there? Wow.
It does, actually. It does.
Okay.
So that's the big stuff. I don't know. How's the what, you're in the Midwest treating you?
So I'm a little north of Detroit right now. It is a balmy 41 degrees right now with a nice little drizzle. That might as well be 70 and 80. 78 and sunny by the weather that we've gotten in the last few weeks here. But you know what? Hey, do you know who's been hot? It's your UCLA Bruins. And you know what? Our Spartans were hot. Just ended a win streak in the double digits. And we're not going to mince words over on our side here. This is a really big game for Michigan State because, well, for the first time in a long time over here in Sparty land, we're going into February with Big Ten contention on our mind. Now we, of course, just lost the game to USC. If we leave this West Coast trip with another loss, an 0-2 record in California, well, our two-game lead in the Big Ten race evaporates just like that. So that's the stakes for Michigan State. It's a big game. You want to keep somewhat of a lead here in the Big Ten race as you go back home. But for UCLA, a fascinating UCLA season over there. Like, what does a win mean for you guys?
That's a signature win. Of course, I remember I was texting you, Matt, and it was like, y'all better not lose this game. I want the hype to be real. And then every team in the top 25 lost. So then I was like,
everyone.
I guess I have to take that. Everybody
I know.
lost. So that was a weird day. Of course, Michigan State, that game was earlier in the day, but then everything went crazy. And then, of course, NBA news broke. So I forgot all about college basketball that day. That's a whole nother topic. But for UCLA, this would mean they're a legitimate contender. And we haven't figured out if they're contenders, if they're pretenders. I've leaned heavy hometown bias that they are a contender. Mick Cronin called this team soft and delusional. I've been very hard on this team when they were down. Now, there's been a lot of things, whether it's off the court in terms of the wildfires that happened when the losing streak started, the travel to Lincoln, to Los Angeles, and then to Maryland and Rutgers. That doesn't help things for a West Coast-based team. All that combined into UCLA figured out their secret weapon with Aday Mara, mostly finding that they're not going to get beaten up in the paint and they can start beating some good teams.
Yeah, because I'm just looking at the schedule right here, and I'm glad you brought up the Mick Cronin, using the words delusional and soft, because a team can respond one of two ways. I remember that press conference. I was like, oh boy, UCLA is about to go on a tear, or it's going to get bumpy here because, oh boy, you got to push the right buttons. Odd enough, though, in the last 11 games, you've kind of gotten the best of both worlds over there because you guys are 6-5 in the last 11 games. It's not your typical 6-5, though, where it's win-loss, win-loss. No, it's, of course, as you UCLA fans know, that includes a losing streak, 5 out of 6 games, and then, you guys are currently on a 5-game win streak right now. So what has happened? I mean, is the locker room just responding better to Cronin? You mentioned that you guys got some good bolster defense in the paint. What has been the key to the turnaround here over at UCLA?
There's kind of a couple things. UCLA does have a tendency to miss some free throws and blow some games. So I believe if you're counting the North Carolina game in those 11 games, they choked a game here and there. Eric Daly Jr. is a big portion of UCLA's offense. He got hurt during the North Carolina game. He didn't play in the Nebraska game. So there's a couple of games where their best players wasn't playing. Even UCLA is without Tyler Bilodeau. Even though they won both those games, they've had small injury scares, and that hurt them in some of those losses. But mostly, they got pummeled in the paint. And then these last few games that they've won, they've had a major, major presence in the paint, which kind of gives a flip of the script in this season, thinking, okay, I don't think they're going to win the Big Ten title based on the standings, but they can compete for the tournament and the NCAA tournament for sure.
What's the energy around the program like right now? Because you know what, I'll get on UCLA fans' good side right now by talking down on your rival, USC. That's not necessarily a basketball school. That was a neutral court setting on Saturday. Now, of course, it didn't matter. The Trojans pulled ahead very early and were playing ahead the whole game, and they won. But What kind of atmosphere can we expect on Tuesday? I know that sounds kind of like a silly question, but truly, like after an energized game on Saturday for the Spartans, 3 time zones away, are things like all good over there at UCLA? Everyone happy with Mick Cronin, how the season's going, or what can we expect here at Poly?
The energy should be legitimate. I know that they're winning a lot. They had a pretty good turnout for the Oregon game. I know those tickets were pretty cheap, ironically enough, but they're ticking up a bit for the Michigan State game. You see the ranking next to them. You see who's atop the Big Ten standings. I'd be very disappointed if the fans don't show up, whether it's people in green or people in blue and gold. It should be a pretty packed out arena, and I think the energy is there. Of course, we're not used to it on the West Coast being a Tuesday night game. That's a whole nother topic of discussion. For Mick Cronin, he's seen the whole circle of emotions. I've somewhat criticized him. The fans, in today's day and age, we don't like coaches coming out and saying you're soft and delusional. All right. He took a very big national hit for saying that about his team to the media. Now, he's clearly done that to his team many times. I did an episode of Locked On UCLA. Every year he does this. He'll call it his team. Now, this is probably the most bombastic, but in my mind, this is the team he's had with all the transfers that have been the best in recent years. So he feels like he has to go that much further to drive this team to get better. In my mind, that's why he went so far to call them out in the media to say, hey, why did we lose to Michigan? We were soft. I disagree that they're soft to lose to Michigan because Michigan's got 2 7-footers.
That helps, right?
A 7-foot point guard. UCLA does not match up well with that. So I disagreed with the timing, but I understood he does that more successfully. So people are like, fire him. Of course, those are the extremes. Some people are like, this team needs time. This is a good team. Will they go all the way? My blind optimism says yes. The reality says a good stretch in the NCAA tournament could lead them to a Final Four. A bad matchup, they could lose in the first weekend.
That's often a delusional comment. I'm sure, me and many other Michigan State fans. Well, yes, like that did pop up on the headlines, and we did make a mental note of, I wonder how they're going to respond to that. He also kind of yawned, too, because Izzo's been doing that to his team for 3 decades now. And I've actually, this was many moons ago when I was a student reporter at the college paper over at Michigan State, but we get to go to some practices for media availability. And if soft and delusional was the only words Izzo used, then, oh my goodness, that's G-rated compared to what I've heard used on his team before. But hey, it's all about pushing the right buttons. It's all about getting the most out of your guys and, reading the room. And you know what? Hey, that's what Izzo's got going on over here. It's going to be interesting to see them bounce back. He didn't really go the whole, hey, my team is fat and sassy, we can't handle success route, which is something he has done not just in years past, but he's also done it this season after wins, saying, oh my goodness, my team, they're getting a little too ahead of their skis here. But no, it's going to be interesting because he did talk about the fast start that USC got off on, and that's the second game in a row where their opponent, at the under-16 timeout, you're already down multiple possessions. That hasn't been a problem for Michigan State since early in the season. So for me, going into this game, I am a little curious if there is going to be a mix-up of the starting rotation. Do you get Jace Richardson out there to get you off to a hotter start? Do you get Cohen Carr out there? Maybe, make it less stale, not just on offense, but on defense too. What's one thing that you're looking for on your end for UCLA before we get into the nitty-gritty on both of our teams here in a little bit?
Well, I have one answer and then a question for you, Matt.
Yeah.
One for me, UCLA is with the addition of Aday Mara. With him coming, he's their 7'3" Spaniard that's taken a year and a half to really emerge.
Okay.
He started off the season with an injury, came out. UCLA has been balancing between their 2 leading scorers, Bilodeau, and Daly, and then Mata. Those 3 can't play on the court at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I wonder what Cronin's starting lineup is going to be. He played it perfectly in my mind when they beat Oregon down, destroyed them and swept the Oregon Ducks. The Oregon Ducks did not show up in the second part of that second half.
Right.
And so it's balancing how you can use your 3 most important pieces at this moment, 3 most important pieces, and how do you use them when you can only use 2 out of 3 on the court at a time to be your most optimal. I'll find that. And for you, Matt, how do you think the Spartans are going to handle the teams coming west, right? The thing has been UCLA going east. What about the teams coming west? Is that what happened on Saturday?
Izzo actually directly said that. He said, I don't think this has anything to do with travel. And, he also paired it with, I don't think it has anything to do with our schedule, which is interesting. But actually, I did look at let's reverse here. I did look at East and Central Time Zone Big Ten teams that have already made their Big Ten road trips out west, either the Oregon-Washington loop or the USC-UCLA loop. There's only 6 teams going into this that have done that, and the record was above 500 for those teams. So far, they're not being as impacted by the travel as you would think. And Michigan State, yes, they did lose, but I'm going to defer to the head coach here. He said it wasn't an issue. I don't think he would even use that as an excuse on, a microphone, should that have actually been the reason. But I for one, think he was genuine saying that. So it's going to be fascinating because I was more worried about the second game in this road trip than I was the first game, not just because UCLA is a little more talented than USC, but yeah, you're now spending days away from home. You're in this hotel for days at a time. Does it mesh with the team at all? We're going to find out here. So I got some more questions about UCLA. We'll flip the script in segment 3. You'll grill me about my Michigan State Spartans, but Zach, I'm sure there are people out there that want to get to Pauley Pavilion, so they should head over to Game Time to save that money. Whether it's not just a sporting event, but let's talk concerts, let's talk comedy shows. If there's a ticketed event in your area, odds are you'll find it on Game Time, and not just odds are, you will save some money there. Whether it is the flash deals leading up to the game or the event, go ahead, hop on the Game Time app and look at their flash deals. You're going to find great seats in great sections for great prices, and let's say you're a procrastinator like I am over here. You're walking up to Pauley Pavilion, and oh my goodness gracious, that's right. I never even got the tickets yet. Oh boy, well, it must be too late to save money, right? No, not with the last-minute ticket deals over at Game Time. They help the planners. They help the procrastinators alike, and they're going to help you right off the bat because when you make an account over at Game Time, use promo code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Guys, that is over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right. I'm looking at the analytics. I'm looking at your box scores. I'm looking at everything. And one number that pops out the most, defensive efficiency for UCLA. And I don't like this. You guys are top 20 in the nation at that. You guys are 17th best in the country. Here's a really well thought out question for you, Zach. You ready? Why? Why are you guys so good at defense? What is stirring the drink over there? Is it the front court, the back court, a little bit of everything? Take it away.
Well, to get on the court at UCLA under a Mick Cronin coach team, you don't play defense, you don't play.
Yep.
All right. UCLA has last year's third best 3-point shooter in the country who transferred in Dominic Harris. He doesn't play at all.
Gotcha.
That's
okay.
A guy who's supposed to shoot you can't play defense. You're not going to play. If you're a youngster after last year's disaster of a season when they couldn't really play Mick Cronin style defense, you do not play. Now, the struggle is the best offensive players aren't the best defensive players for Mick Cronin. And for a large part of the season, they were undersized. But what he uses is this deflection bone. It's a heart and hustle. How many deflections can UCLA get? Can they get their hands on the pass, on a shot? If the ball's on the ground, if it's being dribbled, can they deflect it away? That's with Kobe Johnson, the USC transfer coming to UCLA. He is a pickpocket machine. Yeah. And you got Aday Mara. The last couple of games, he's had 8 blocks. So even though he's not the most mobile, there's a post presence defensively. And UCLA's been really good at forcing turnovers or just deflecting passes and getting in those passing lanes. Now, I haven't seen UCLA be consistent at defending shots, or if they're not forcing turnovers, teams can still shoot a really good percentage against the Bruins.
Okay.
And then the big thing is, what are the officials doing? If they're blowing the whistles, UCLA has the tendency to go from dominating a game defensively to then all of a sudden the opposition is going to shoot 15 free throws, which is a little bit of Michigan State's game plan. One of the best free throw shooting teams, one of the best at taking free throws per game. That leans in Sparty's favor, whether it's for a 5 to 10 minute stretch, whether UCLA's up or down, that could swing this game. But the Bruins, they play physical. If the whistle isn't being blown, UCLA will dominate that stretch. And if they're getting deflections and turnovers, they can run out in the fast break, and they're sometimes mid half court offense is not going to come into play.
Now, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Big Ten fan, obviously. Been a Michigan State fan my whole life. We've been in the Big Ten my whole life. So we're used to just absurd officiating, to put it lightly. Just very ticky-tack. You can get a foul called on you just for even looking at a guy with both your eyeballs. What's it like, though, from just, switching from Pac-12 to Big Ten? Is there a drastic difference in how these games are called, in your opinion?
Well, isn't the joke like there's Pac-12 after dark, and the joke is Pac-12 officials? We on the West Coast always hated Pac-12 officiating. The joke is Pac-12 officials. But I think the problem is every segment of the country is like, man, official. I mean, maybe the SEC, because they know how to get their top teams to the final.
Right.
But
yep, sure do.
But every other segment of the country, they're confident, man, our officials suck. Like at some point, not every official can suck that bad. But we believe in the Pac-12 that they were the worst. So going to the Big Ten, we'll just throw it up to, they're just a little slow because they traveled so far. And maybe that's why they had the foul called on them. Or Mick Cronin came out, I think it's the Maryland game, after he told his team was soft and delusional. He got kicked out of the Maryland game saying the officiating was so bad. And there was like a 9-point game. And he's like, I'm giving up on this game with 5 minutes left. I'm done. 9-point game. He said, I'm out. I'm going to get kicked out.
I'm out of here.
I don't think it's that drastic that I've noticed, other than like it's just normal college basketball. But there is a clear shift in games I've noticed from half to half, non-conference to conference. Sometimes UCLA just, like it happened against Arizona. Arizona had a big run. The Bruins got called for officials. And then when UCLA didn't call for fouls, Arizona didn't make a bucket for 9 minutes.
There we go. Simple as that. To bring it back onto your actual player. So, sorry to go on a tangent there about the Zebras.
I love
just
tangents.
Curious. You know what? I'm staring at your guys' games. I'm watching your games. I'm looking at the box scores right now, and I'm also seeing 6'9" Tyler Bilodeau. You've mentioned him a few times right now, but offensively, like that's who I'm most, I guess, concerned about as a Michigan State fan. That's not to say that we've done bad against stretch guys like Tyler Bilodeau, but he does offer a matchup that is uncomfortable, not just for Michigan State, but a lot of teams in college. Would you say that's your top offensive threat going into this one, Tyler, or is there another one you want to put the spotlight on?
Well, it's just you're coming at an interesting time where UCLA is realizing their full potential. Bilodeau, when he's playing as a 4 as opposed to a 5, I think can dominate so much more.
Yeah.
And if he makes a couple of threes early, he's got good 3-point shooting numbers, although he doesn't take a lot of them. If he hits them early, he can be very dangerous. Eric Daly Jr. has played 2 games against what was then a top 20 Oregon team. This is his numbers against a top 20 Oregon team. 20 points per game, 88% from the field, 83% from 3 in 2 separate games.
It's not bad.
So Daly Jr. can eat teams alive. And then if Bilodeau doesn't have to go back to the basket, turn around every time, Mata is a walking bucket in the paint, a la old school Kareem with a little right-handed baby sky hook at some point. But Bilodeau is the straw that stirs the drink, but they did just win 2 games without him, including beating USC on the road. And that's something Sparty couldn't do. And UCLA did that without their leading scorer. So they have learned how to play without him. And this is only their, I think, second game that they'll have their 3 best options down low all playing in the same game. So Bilodeau is the one that's going to pop out in the stat sheet. Daly is the underrated, most important player. And then Mata is the guy that's going to make this team a Final Four contender if they learn how to play like this consistently.
And that's a lot of upbeat talk on UCLA. Of course, why not? You guys have won 5 in a row. But what concerns you what concerns you going into this one Tuesday night?
Well, Michigan State doesn't necessarily rely on the 3. So if I believe what Eric Musselman for USC, he did funky things defensively to really throw Sparty off their game. And Cronin likes to stick to his guns and stick with his own defensive style. There are times when if UCLA gets terrible guard play and they turn it over, and there's just times during games UCLA forgets how to play.
Okay.
2,
helpful.
If there's a segment where it comes to a free throw shooting competition, the numbers lean Michigan State. Yeah. My heart leans Michigan State. And if UCLA needs to shoot free throws and they're up 8 with 5 minutes to go, they've proven they're not always going to make them. So even if they're leading late, that's how they can blow it. And the recipe for success in big wins for the Bruins, hit threes, don't turn it over. And you can't always rely on that metric. So if they get cold from downtown where they can truly outscore Michigan State, then that's where I think UCLA could find themselves a little bit off. And prior to the USC game, I would have leaned Michigan State winning this game. But now I don't really know what to think about this one. It's an interesting battle.
Well, I'm going to put you in a tough corner right now because, we'll transition. You'll grill me about Michigan State here. But for our bridge to that conversation right now, mosey on over to barttorvik.com. They suspect a UCLA 70-68 victory. They're favored by 2 right now on the computers. The FanDuel line may be different by a half point or a full point, what have you. Does that sound right, though? UCLA 2-point victory. Are you expecting a close, narrow victory for your Bruins, or where are you at right now?
Well, to sidestep the question, as most people always tend to do. First, I wonder how that changed after the USC game. I wonder if it did change a lot.
I think it was by like a point.
So UCLA's still been favored.
Yeah. Yep.
The Bruins have played well. Michigan State isn't like overly big in the post. And if UCLA can find a way to use Mara effectively and shoot well enough, which they've done in all their big wins, I think that is an accurate telling. And with them losing to SC, I think UCLA can win this game in a very close one, but it can easily go both ways.
100%. I'm kind of feeling the same thing, but something weird about me just like feels oddly comfortable about Michigan State coming off a loss. Like those are some of the Michigan State best preps. That's the thing. It's like, oh, hey, well, UCLA just beat the absolute brakes off the last few teams they've played. Michigan State coming off a loss. Is there like a yo-yo thing going on in Big Ten play, as there often is? We're going to unfortunately just have to stay tuned to find out. And for the East Coast people, stay up until like 12:30 in the morning to watch that. Doesn't bother me. I'm a night owl, but plenty of Michigan State fans not thrilled with the tip-off time here. But I'm sure we don't have any room to complain for the West Coast people that got to watch some games at 9 a.m., which has got to be a real peachy treat for you over there. Enough about that, though. What you want to learn about those Michigan State Spartans over here?
My thing is, how does your team average 80 points per game and not take a shot or make a shot behind the arc consistently? Obviously, we alluded to the free throw shooting. How does the Tom Izzo offense work with this team?
It's a good question. I don't know. Next question. No. So it is fascinating. It is the most perplexing thing statistically that this is the worst 3-point shooting team in the Izzo era, but also the one that's averaging the most points per game. And what doesn't make sense, too, if I could go off on a slight tangent, like Michigan State right now, 29% from three. That is 347th in the nation. Their free throws are 80%. They are fifth best in the country. Usually those numbers match up somewhat. If you can shoot, you can shoot. But here we are. So I don't know if it's a mental block from three-point land, but whatever it has forced Michigan State to actually have a half-court offense that works. They have a young freshman, Jace Richardson. He is incredible, not just for a freshman, but just for a college basketball player, at cutting through the lane and actually finishing at the rim, something that has been lacking here at Michigan State recently. They've gotten some pick-and-roll action going with Cohen Carr the last few weeks, and he's also grown his game, too, in more than just a dunk artist, but a guy that can also drive through the lane and, well, my goodness gracious, finish at the hoop. And then, of course, you got your typical Tom Izzo. Hey, you know what? You're going to defend, you're going to rebound, but you're also going to run. They are making hay in the transition. Teams have also just said, we're not even going to try to offensive rebound. We're just going to try to set up that picket fence at half court and make sure we slow down the transition. And yes, it has worked at times for teams. There's also been some examples where, no, even though they want to set up a defense that stops transition, it just doesn't work against Michigan State. It has been a hearkened to the past for Tom Izzo basketball of just run, run, run. So that's how you can be a 29% shooter from three and still put up 80 points per game. It is statistically baffling over here.
What was equally baffling was the fact that USC got out big early against Michigan State. They cut the lead to three at the half, and then I don't think they ever led in that game, if I'm not mistaken.
No, never.
They never led for 40 minutes against USC. So what went wrong in that game? To tell the UCLA fans, why are we sitting here mad that it was USC who lost or USC who beat them? And then,
Yeah, oddly enough, it was one of the strengths early on in this game, and that's rebounding. Michigan State, one of the better rebounding teams in not just the Big Ten, but the country. And yes, they did beat USC in the final box score, 34-33 in the rebounds. But early on, USC, they're up, I think it was 15 points, 22-7, if memory serves correct. And they were up 9-3 on the boards. It was simple as that. And then you bleed into the second half, and give USC credit. They made some great shots late in the shot clock. I think Michigan State's defense overall was fine. But hey, you know what? You got stone cold killers on the other team. Well, yeah, they're going to get it done, and that's what the Trojans did. But also, what bled into the second half was some rebounding issues. 5-point game late in the game. All right, Michigan State, let's get a stop and let's get a score. What doesn't help there, though, is that USC in one possession got 4 chances at points, and then that ended with a foul, 2 free throws. Bada boom, bada bing. USC's up 7, and look, not to pit it to just one possession, but I think that really took all the air remaining out of Michigan State's balloon right out of there. So, yeah, hey, you know what? They've only been out-rebounded twice this whole season, and they weren't out-rebounded last game, but I think that was a big issue here. Aside from everything that was going on with the offense and what you pointed out earlier, Musselman doing some different things defensively, sagging off some three-point shooters, daring Michigan State to get into the paint. But when they were in the paint, it's that USC defender that was sagging off, and they're actually there because that's how they know you're going to score, and they didn't. So a little cocktail of reasons, but yeah, those are the 2 big ones.
UCLA this year has struggled with size. I don't believe Michigan State to be as big as some of those teams UCLA has struggled with, who do you think are your best post players that make the big rebounding margins happen, and who can score in the paint consistently?
Well, the scoring in the paint consistently is an interesting one because it's actually been kind of a lull here with the front court, and Michigan State fans know it's been an upgrade from last season, but that's an upgrade from the basement. We had maybe the worst or the second worst front court in the nation. So while they have been fine this year,
UCLA would like to contend for that.
Okay, well, let's find out Tuesday. No, so what was disappointing about Saturday's game against USC is that they don't really have a bona fide, big man up there to defend the low post, but we still couldn't get it down there and get an early score in the low block. So that was disappointing. Again, not to say the whole season's a dud for the front court, but that was concerning on Saturday. Now for rebounding, interestingly enough, it's not 7-footer Jamon Sapal, it's not 6'11" guy Carson Cooper, and they're fine at rebounding. It's 6'9" Jackson Kohler, and that's 6'9" if he was wearing 2 pairs of socks and the right pair of shoes that day. But he's not just rebounding good, not great. He's at a borderline elite level as far as rebounding percentages go. That's one of the stats that I look to when you look up rebounding. What percentage of these balls is he coming down with? Bart Torvik started tracking the stat in 2008. If you stop the season right now with his rebounding percentage numbers, he's top 3 for Michigan State players since 2008, and he's also, I think, squarely in the top 15 for Big Ten players since 2008 too. So it's not it sounds ridiculous to say little engine that could for a guy that's 6'9" on a roster, but truly he is a touch undersized, but he's a rebounding machine so far. So give it up to Jackson Kohler for that. That's a huge reason why Michigan State's been doing good rebounding in the front court.
All right, I got 2 good questions for you. They go off one another.
All right.
What makes you super confident about Michigan State coming into this game beyond just the fact they came off loss? And what makes you afraid to play the Bruins?
It is the stupid reason. It is just, hey, Tom Izzo off a loss. He can get the guys right. If there's one coach that can push the right buttons, it's that. But no, what gives me confidence is that Saturday just went so bad for so many facets of the game, right? We just talked about the strengths of rebounding not going well, but Michigan State's been lauded for being such a deep team, and usually that can work out to Michigan State's favor if you're not getting it from your starters, which there have been games where that has happened. Well, at least you got some really solid guys off the bench that can pick up the slack, but no one ever really did. So that was a real dud of a game for Michigan State, and again, give USC credit for the way they handled things on the defensive end, but you got what would you call it? A D-plus game from your whole team, and you had it within 1 or 2 possessions on the road against a USC team that was playing probably above their punching weight that day. So that gives me odd confidence is that, man, it really takes a combination of all 9-10 players in the rotation to have games to lose. But what scares me about UCLA, it is that defense because, oh boy, if USC is full of athletes, they're long, they don't really have, a true guard or true big man, but they were able to bother Michigan State, kind of how Memphis did a few months ago. Well, shoot, what's a real aggressive, athletic, and long UCLA team going to do to us, especially on the road? So, yeah, I sorry to just, point to something so broad, but it is the UCLA defense because, man, a few days ago, well, that's what hung Michigan State up. It was just, aggressive and just irritating USC was on defense. So if you could tell the boys over there to calm down, that'd be great, Zach. If you could just do it, please.
Yeah, you gotta tell the zebras. Tell the zebras to blow the whistle and blow the whistle. Not the song, but
I hope so. No, we'll do the song anyway. We can hammer the point home because that was also odd against USC too. I've said, Michigan State 80% from the free throw stripe. I think it was 11 of 19 from them against USC. So they picked a real bad time to, have a dip down to the college basketball average, but hopefully they could pick it back up here. It was just an afternoon of oddities on Saturday. I just want this game to be somewhat normal, but why would it?
Well, it's on Peacock. What's going to be normal about the game on Peacock?
So how many games have you had on Peacock? Because we've now had 2 this year, and I think they've had the correct score on the screen for a total of 4 minutes of game time. They have gotten some technical issues over there. I don't know if not enough people are subscribing to their $8 a month and they got to use some shoddy tech. But it is a real choose-your-own adventure because you never know if it's the correct score on the screen. I don't know if you guys have had the same Peacock experience.
Because they had the Michigan-UCLA game on Peacock.
Okay.
It just didn't seem like the guys on the call had a lot of energy. It's interesting.
Fascinating. Okay. And because, I actually went to a game against Minnesota. It was on Peacock, and I was lucky enough to sit, kind of behind the scores table. And they had a monitor where you can draw, as you do in many broadcasts of many sports. And the entire first half, Robbie Hummel, he was one of the play-by-play guys. he's running IT on this thing. It was never working the entire game. It was air screen, air screen, air screen. So poor guy's just trying to call a basketball game, and he's just trying to do software engineering work. I felt so bad for him, and eventually they did get it to work, and it was, I don't. Thanks everyone for the.
Isn't that what they teach at Purdue though?
Work.
Like, shouldn't he know?
That's, maybe they were throwing him a test right there.
I mean, he went to Purdue for like 70 years. I feel like he should know it, own it, and just like distribute the product.
Right, but oddly enough, like that monitor also looked like it predated his time at Purdue. It looked straight out of 1987, the technology they were working with. So we need more people to subscribe to Peacock so they can get
NBA
more
on
money
NBC, and they never updated the tech.
Never, not even once. I'm glad they kept the theme song around though, so that's good. Well, that was a good conversation. I'm properly scared for this game, but that shouldn't surprise anyone, especially Locked On Spartans listeners. I can get scared before a game against our local high school at this time of the year. I'm a very jumpy person. So how are you feeling for this game? Confident? Where are you at?
Excited, nervous, and wondering what's the over-under and how many players both these teams will use combined. I'm thinking you can get close to 20.
I was going to say 22. I can see it. They might have to pull someone from the crowd if they have to, especially if the fouls are flying early here. Folks, that's Zach over there, Locked on UCLA. What's up? It's Matt over here with Locked on Spartans. Anything you're going to talk about next episode, Zach? I'm going to talk about the game that happens, for better or for worse. But how about you? What do you got cooking over there?
Same thing. It's all in the game that it happens.
Let's go. Folks, UCLA fans, Spartan fans, we will both see you next time. Take care of yourselves.